So when I was a teenager, I wanted to beat shame or embarrassment because it's a big thing as a kid, right? We embarrass easily as teenagers, and you can be controlled with shame and with embarrassment. And I hated that concept. I hated that people knew that if they could just say something that embarrassed me, then it's like they could control me. Or they could determine how I was going to feel. I didn't like that, and I wanted to be invincible, impervious to the commentary of others, and not concerned with how my classmates viewed me. I felt that if I could get rid of concern for how other people viewed me, then I would basically be socially invincible. So I'd be able to walk the halls of my school, do anything, say anything, be going through anything, and no matter what happens to me, I would be fine. So I set out on this quest through my teens to defeat shame, and I would do various things that today are used as therapeutic techniques to defeat shame, such as sitting on the ground in the hallway of the school. Wearing my clothes backwards, walking backwards. I would act like different characters and things like that. And I remember this one particular time I was asked to walk in this fashion show or something that was going to happen in front of the entire school at an assembly. And I'm like, the whole school is going to be in one place. This is perfect. My perfect opportunity to defeat shame. So I decided I would do something crazy, some kind of stunt that would be otherwise embarrassing. I had already developed a reputation at that point as the class clown because of all of the outlandish things that I would come up with to do. But I was trying to purposely embarrass myself so that I wouldn't feel embarrassment. So there I was at this school assembly with the entire school there, and all the teachers, the faculty, the staff was there, and the music was going, and I had my steps, the blocking to walk in this fashion show. You just got to walk out to the end of the stage, and then you got to walk back, and then whatever, you got to pose and do this thing. So I walk out to the end of the stage, and I walk back, and as I walked back, I purposely fell off the side of the stage. I thought that would probably be the most embarrassing thing that could happen. So I went for it. Yes, on purpose. I purposely fell off the stage in a fashion show in front of the entire school. And I got a laugh, and I got written up in the school newspaper. But the more I would aim toward defeating this shame, the less I would feel embarrassed. And of course, I felt the dysregulation, like, the nerves, the heart is beating, and like all of that. But despite all of the fear, I still moved forward with doing what I thought could help me to defeat this shame. And interestingly, even though I was doing things to embarrass myself, it was just solidifying my reputation. I was just becoming more rock solid in the eyes of others. Instead of them viewing me as unacceptable, more and more people viewed me indeed as very acceptable. And so with that, I present to you our topic for today, which is shame, because I would think that at this point I am an expert in how to defeat shame. So when you are a survivor of trauma, the things that I'm describing to you may seem like the worst things in the world, like purposely doing things that would cause you embarrassment. Because many survivors of trauma have learned and adapted to do just the opposite, to try to avoid embarrassment at all costs. There's a reason for that, because we want to survive. And it would seem conventionally that our social survival depends on doing things to fit in and not doing anything to stand out and making sure that we're not rocking the boat. And so in order to fit in and not stand out, we have to make sure we're conforming and walking to the beat of the drum. And the last thing we would want is for someone to see us in an embarrassing light, for someone to look upon our shame. And so what is shame? Generally, when we talk about shame in context with trauma, we are talking about maladaptive shame. We're talking about toxic shame. So yes, let me acknowledge there is healthy shame, like the shame that keeps you from picking your nose or putting your hand down your pants in public. Excuse the crudeness, but it's good that we have that type of shame, isn't it? But then there's maladaptive shame, toxic shame, where you're walking around feeling like your finger is up your nose, or feeling like you're doing something totally inappropriate, even when you're not. That's toxic shame. With toxic shame, we feel like we are unworthy. And this is something that trauma survivors experience often. Trauma survivors will blame themselves for things that happen, feel like they should have done something different to prevent it. And they'll experience shame because they feel guilt to a level that's beyond what's healthy. So when you're blaming yourself for everything that even is not necessarily your fault, and you're feeling guilt for things that are not your fault, so you're feeling shame, because shame is the dirty step cousin of guilt. It's guilt on steroids. It's guilt beyond what's necessary. It's feeling actually like you are worthless instead of what you did was worthless. Like you are bad instead of what happened was bad. It's taking the evil of the world and ascribing it to the self. So self-blame and shame are closely related. We're looking at the world in terms of all the bad out there should be ascribed to me. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. And everyone can see it. I'm embarrassed. Once we get into self-blame and all the extra guilt, and we get into the shame, do you feel like going out in public anymore? Do you feel like starting relationships? Do you feel like going for promotions? Absolutely not. So as you can see, the more shame we're taking on for ourselves, the more we are limiting our life. It will actually impair us to be blaming ourselves and to be taking on shame. So how do we break free from shame? Well, it's not easy, right? Because if you've been viewing yourself with shame identity for your whole life, oh my God, everyone knows, everyone thinks I'm bad. I don't want anyone to see me in this certain light. So you're walking through the hallways of school, and you're walking through the corridors at work and the streets in your neighborhood with the shame. Everyone thinks I'm this. Everyone thinks I'm that. It's hard to deprogram that, because at this point now we've created neural pathways and neural networks in our brain that are solid. Seemingly, it feels like they're concrete. So it feels like we always look at every situation as to how it could be our fault. For instance, you could have survivor guilt. Survivor's guilt is where you went through the trauma, you were traumatized, but since you survived, you feel guilty that you didn't do more, that you didn't prevent it, that you're responsible in some way for the harm. Do you experience that? Survivor's guilt. You got traumatized, but you're blaming yourself. Some people feel shame over their reactions to the trauma. They feel ashamed that they felt scared, or that they felt helpless, or that they got mad. Some feel self-blame over their coping mechanisms, because some of us admittedly turn to drugs or alcohol to cope, and then we feel shame over it. Or we turn to retail therapy and spending money to cope, and then we feel shame over it. Or we turn to self-harm, and then we feel shame over it. Or we turn to disordered eating, and then we feel ashamed. Some people feel shame about their lack of emotional regulation, because being trauma survivors, they have difficulty regulating their emotions, and then The impact on their relationship is negative, so they feel ashamed. Oh, why can't I hold it together? Why do I always lose my temper? Why do I always start crying? Some feel shame about seeking help. They don't want to call a therapist because they're ashamed. They don't want to tell the truth about what really happened because they're ashamed. Some feel shame about what actually happened to them. Have you ever felt that? You're the one who was traumatized. You're the one who was abused, but it's embarrassing to tell people that you were abused, right? This can happen when there was sexual abuse, especially. You feel like you don't want to tell people that that happened to you. So you feel shame over it. You feel like everyone already knows that it happened to you and they're judging you. And then you just feel like it's shame identity. Like everyone's looking at you a certain way because of what happened to you, but that's not fair because you didn't make that thing happen to you. Or men go through this when they're abused by their female spouses, right? They feel shame that they're abused by their spouse because they feel like maybe in society or culture, everyone would laugh at them or look down upon them for being abused. But can you help if someone has abused you? No, it's not fair. Sometimes we feel shame about something we legitimately did wrong. Sometimes we legitimately hurt someone and we feel ashamed of it. We feel bad that we hurt someone, that we did what we did. Sometimes we feel shame that we're not farther in life. Like we haven't done enough, or we're just too old to be where we are, to be struggling with the things we're struggling with. So how do we break out of the shame? Well, after tonight's talk, hopefully you have no more shame. Hopefully you can be shame-free, like the way I was when I walked the halls of my school. You see, what I learned from all of the shenanigans was that the feeling of shame comes from my own perception of a situation. Over time, I started to feel happy or excited when I would be called out or singled out. So the very thing that would embarrass another kid, like a teacher saying, oh, and this, one teacher said to me, in 30 years of teaching, I have never had a student that acts like you. I was so honored. I was so touched. But you see, another student in hearing that could get shame identity, right? They feel like, oh my God, in 30 years, I'm so embarrassed. I think that's what he meant for me to feel. He wanted me to see that I was so ridiculous. He wanted me to feel negatively about myself with that statement, but I felt great. As you see, I'm here bragging to you all about it now. I still take it as such a compliment. I mean, 30 years of teaching and no one ever acted like me. That's great. I feel so happy that I stood out. But what's happening there? Why don't I feel any shame? It's because it's not what happened or what he said that determines the shame. It's how I view it. So shame comes down to your frame or how you're framing the situation. Again, shame comes down to your frame, how you're framing the words, how you're framing the situation. Whatever it was we went through, whatever we go through in life, we can frame it however we want, and we can frame it in I'm worthless, I'm ugly, unlovable, I'm not good enough, I'm not as much as everyone else. That's our choice. You can frame it that way if you want, but will that be helpful to you? Will that help you to become invincible as I was seeking to become as a teenager? Will that help you to become resilient? Remember, in our trauma recovery, everything's going to come back to purpose because we have to be guided by purpose and love. Your purpose is your goals, your aspirations. So where are you going? What are you looking to achieve? Because when you understand the purpose, then you understand how to contextualize or frame things that are happening to you, ways that people are treating you. I wanted to stand out. I wanted to be famous. So when the man said to me, in 30 years, he's never had a student act like I did, that's a compliment because of the want, because of the desire, because of the purpose. It aligned with my purpose, you see. Therefore, I didn't have shame identity. But that's how I chose to frame it, right? So you can take the things that are happening and you can frame them to your advantage. You can frame them so that they help you to get towards your goal, so that they're reinforcing you, rather than framing them in such a way where they bring you down and they hold you back. What use does toxic shame have in your life? None. There is no value to toxic shame. So you can let it go completely. It has no value to you. It will not help you to accomplish your goals. So you can let it go. Toxic shame has no use. It has no value. Does that make sense? Good. So let's reframe these situations that you're feeling shame over. What are you feeling shame about? Is it survivor's guilt? You went through your trauma, but even though it wasn't your fault, you feel like it is your fault, that you didn't help more people, or that you didn't stop it, or that you didn't prevent it. Is that helpful to walk around going through the rest of your life with, oh, this is my fault? Is that helpful? No, because today we're going to reframe the shame so that it doesn't keep us in shame anymore. So what should we be feeling? We should feel proud. We should feel a healthy sense of pride. Now, how can you feel proud when you survived a trauma, but you didn't prevent it? By focusing on the first part, you survived a trauma. See what I did there? It's all how you frame it. You survived a trauma. So now why should you go beating yourself up more when you just got beat down in the trauma? It doesn't make sense. You survived it. So you're not a loser. You're awesome for surviving the trauma. That's why they call you a survivor, because you just went through something that some people don't make it through. But you made it. So you should feel proud, not guilty for everyone who did not make it, because you didn't create the trauma. You didn't do it to them. So why would you feel guilty that they didn't make it? Well, I should have stopped it. Should you have? Could you have? That's debatable. At best. That's debatable. It is not your responsibility or part of your purpose to go around preventing all the wrongs and making something right at all times. No. Identify your purpose. What is your purpose? That is your responsibility. To be aligned with your purpose is your responsibility. So stopping all of these different things from happening and preventing these things and responding the right way, that's not your purpose. So you live and you learn. You've been through it. Maybe now you have a different way that you might respond. That's the value of having gone through what you've gone through. So really, your experience has made you wise. What's more is that as a result of what you went through, you're more credible. You know what I'm doing here? You know how I come up with all these reframing? Because instead of looking at how can I feel shame, I'm looking at how can I feel pride. And that's what your mind needs to search for. So you train your subconscious mind. Search for the pride. Search for the source of pride. And my subconscious mind is searching the trauma for the source of pride. What can I feel proud of? I survived. I made it out. I'm still alive. I'm on purpose, right? What if you're feeling shame about your reactions? Your reactions to abuse, the fact that you felt scared, you felt helpless, felt out of control. Maybe you did reactive abuse. Maybe you hit back or you hit first because they said some words that hurt you. Or you broke something, or you had a temper tantrum. How do we reframe our shame around that? Where can you find the source of pride? How about instead of, oh, I didn't react right, how about now I know that that's not a healthy person for me? Now I know that that relationship is not healthy for me. Whatever happened, happened. So say that. I did what I did. I said what I said. It doesn't do me any good to sit around regretting it. The only value to what happened in the past is learning lessons from it. So let me look at this. Is there any lessons I can learn from this? Yeah. Don't act that way next time. Okay, good. It's done. There's no value in rehashing the past and having shame over it. Now you know. Okay, I did what I did. I said what I said. I'd like to do better next time. Good. Let it go. Why? It's a choice. You have to make the choice now to choose healthy pride. Sometimes we think that it's noble to live in shame, to self-blame. We feel like, well, if I blame me, then I'm doing the noble thing. Maybe you have a subconscious program like that. But think about it. The truth of self-blame, and I'm going to be very honest with you, is children blame themselves. You know, like parents, like if they get divorced, it's a childlike thing to say, are they getting divorced because of me? Parents they're not getting divorced because of a child, right? They have their own issues. It's not the child that made them get divorced, but a child is sometimes so egocentric in their thinking. They think that the bad things that are happening in the world are because of them. And we excuse the child for thinking that way. But recognize now you are not a child. So thinking in this childlike manner is not serving you well. So let's elevate your thinking. Sophisticated, meaning we're going to take in many pieces of information, all the data, analyze all the data. Is it your fault that your parents got divorced? No. An adult doesn't say it's my fault that two other people are having problems in their relationship. An adult says, okay, they're having problems in their relationship. And even if in any way I was a contributing factor, that is just one piece of information. There's many other factors involved in something that's happening between two other people. That's sophisticated thinking, which leads to balanced mindset, which leads to balanced emotions, which leads to not feeling just shame identity, but having pride, a healthy pride, which pulls us out of shame. Is toxic shame any value to us? No. Shame has no value to you. You can let it go. It's not doing you any good. There's nothing good that comes out of it. So what if you self-blame for your coping mechanisms, like the fact that you self-harm, or that you ate too much, or that you became lazy and you didn't exercise, or you used substances? Should you self-blame and feel shame over that? No. Where's the source of pride? Look for the source of pride. How about, I'm a survivor. I'm here. I did what I had to do to make it through, but I'm here right now. I like to handle things differently in the future, but I'm here. I'm all right. I made it. I'm alive. Not, oh, I ate too much. I ate too much. I ate. Okay, yeah, you ate too much. So now you know, but you're still alive. You see, you didn't die from it. So since you're still alive, the only thing that makes sense is to say, oh, I don't want to do that again so that I don't die. I don't want to overdo it. So I'm not going to use the substances anymore because I want to live. I'm not going to overeat anymore because I want to be healthy. I'm not going to self-harm anymore because I want to be healthy and I want to live. Objective, purpose. Be aligned. Stay aligned with your purpose. That's how you measure what you want to do. And it never helps you in your purpose to focus on the past, unless your purpose is to be a historian. You get what I'm saying? Don't focus on the past. It's not doing you any good. The only thing the past is good for is to extract some lessons, some knowledge. It's data. Oh, okay, yeah, that was okay. I'm gonna do no, don't do that. Yeah, okay, got it. Now I know. What happens when people just live in shame? They don't ever become wise. So they make the mistakes, they live in shame. Oh, I feel so bad, I feel so bad. Then what happens when another opportunity to make another mistake comes? They make the same mistake again. Why? Because it doesn't work to live in shame. It doesn't make you better. All you did is, oh, I hate myself, I hate myself. When the opportunity arises to do better, you don't do better because you don't feel better. You don't think well of yourself. And so you just fall right back into the same pit. You don't do better because you don't think better of yourself. But if in the very moment you realize that you've done something wrong, if you skip over the shame and you go directly to extracting the data and interpersonal pride, I'm better than that, then guess what? You're much more likely to not repeat the same mistake again. Does that make sense? There's nothing to feel shame over because it doesn't help. It doesn't do anything. Toxic shame is worthless. So don't even spend a moment there. Extract the data. Okay, now I got to be better. Be better. We don't have time for anything else. I don't have time. Do you have time? Time is moving so quickly. It's moving so fast. We need to be focused on our purpose. Alignment comes from making sure that everything you do will help you towards your goal. Everything. Sitting in shame is not helping you towards your goal. It's holding you back. What if we feel shame around our lack of emotional regulation? Or I cried, or I yelled. I got so mad. I got so angry. I lost my temper. Learn from it. Oh, I lost my temper. Okay, that's a trigger. Take the data. Analyze. All right, so I got to watch that. And if I wouldn't have raised my voice, yep, and I could have walked away there, good. So that's what I will do in the future. Done. Done. Go make yourself a sandwich, a smoothie, grab some coffee. Like literally it's done. Once you've learned the lesson, it's done. You can change like this instantaneously. That's how powerful you are. That's what makes us special as humans. The animals, they can't change. They can't, yeah, I'd really like to be a more loyal person. Like dogs are just dogs, cats are just cats. But humans, we have the ability to analyze, extract the data, and change like this to decide what you want to be. You can be anything. So search for the source of pride and reframe the shame. Reframe the situation so that you don't live in the shame. Is this making sense? It's all how we think. We pull ourselves out of the emotional illness by how we think. So if you're feeling shame about seeking help, analyze your purpose. My purpose is I want to be on stages one day, talking, giving talks around the world. Okay, so is it a good idea to seek help and have a therapist or coach? Yeah, that would be a really good idea. Okay, then go. Well, I would feel scared. I would feel embarrassed. Yes, but you're still capable of moving your body to do what you have to do, regardless of your feeling. You can manage the embarrassment. You manage the guilt by managing the thoughts around it. So instead of, oh, I've done something wrong, you go, I've done what I needed to do. I've done what I could. I may have made a mistake because I'm imperfect. What if you have shame about something that happened to you? Because the trauma was kind of embarrassing. You were abused, you were assaulted, accosted, molested. It was something that you don't want to tell people. You're feeling shame around it. Where can you find the source of pride? Analyze it for a moment. Where can you find the source of pride in the situation? How about, it's amazing that I survived that and I'm doing so well. It's amazing that I survived that and I'm doing so well. So every time my mind goes, oh, that's so embarrassing that that happened. I go, but it's amazing that I survived that and I'm doing so well. And every time my mind goes, but I'm so embarrassed, I go, but I survived that and I'm doing so well. That's amazing. And another source of pride is I could be a source of inspiration to other people. Yeah, I could be a real inspiration. And this gives me a lot of street credibility now because I can say I've been through some stuff. People will really be able to respect that. And see what I'm doing? As I do this, I keep moving myself forward toward my purpose and I start growing. And now I'm more resilient, right? And now when it comes up to make a mistake, I'm not going to fall back in the same pit because I don't live in shame identity. That's not me. I am not this old thing that happened back here 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago, months ago, days ago, weeks ago, minutes ago. I'm not the person I was when I started this talk. I am learning and growing. I am the person I want to be. That is my identity. It's not shame identity. It's personal pride identity. I identify with my personal power, my ability to do what I want to do, to go where I want to go and be anything that I want to be. What happens though if you did something legitimately wrong? Like you really did hurt someone, you did an act of violence or you stole something. Okay. There's healthy guilt. There's toxic shame. Sometimes we think that we're being more good by going into toxic shame. No, I don't deserve to see the light of day. No, oh, I'm just a wretched, terrible person. You're not doing yourself or the world any good with all that. We expect you, we are putting the expectation on you to take care of yourself. So just beating yourself over something that you did wrong, that's really not helpful. So if you did something that was legitimately foul and you shouldn't have done it, then recognize that and say, oh, that was legitimately wrong. I shouldn't have done that. Okay, good. Healthy guilt. But we still go into personal power, which is going to be asking myself, okay, well, what can I do about it now? Well, maybe I could apologize. Maybe I could write a letter. Maybe I could show contrition. Sometimes that's not even appropriate or not possible, depending on how bad what we did it was. So you just focus on what you can do. Well, I can be a person that doesn't do things like that from here on out. What more could society want than for the individuals who have transgressed to learn from their transgressions and to become better and to transcend? What more could society want from you than to just transcend? We don't want you to just sit around beating yourself for something you did wrong. Transcend. Grow. So please use these this technique of reframing the shame. Reframe the situation so that you're not living in shame. Self-blaming is not noble. It's not noble. It's noble to be willing to accept responsibility when you are actually responsible. But it's not noble to just self-blame. It's childlike, and we need to get out of that. So fix your philosophy. There's a few reasons why bad things actually happen or why something went wrong. One of the reasons is evil. One of the reasons is imperfection. One of the reasons is randomness. If you like acronyms, you can go REI, randomness, evil, imperfection. Those are the reasons why bad things happen. That explains all of the bad things, all of the traumas in the universe. It's either because there was somebody who was evil and they wanted to make that happen to you, or there was some imperfection in a person that did something wrong, but it wasn't on purpose, or you did something wrong, but it wasn't on purpose, or the system was imperfect. That's imperfection. Or it's random. Because of the nature of the imperfect society we're living in, random things happen. You step out on the road at the wrong time, you get hit by a car, there's a freak accident at work, gadgets will explode on you. Bad things can happen. You can suffer, you can go through trauma, and sometimes it's just random. There is no one to blame. But if you notice, when you think REI and you realize, oh, wow, there's many reasons why something bad can happen, namely 3 reasons. Self-blame isn't on the list. There's imperfection, there's evil, there's randomness. So recognize the universe the way it really is and live in that, not in the delusion. So hopefully this talk helped you to be able to let go of your shame. At this time, we'd like to open up our discussion to the group. So if you're in our Zoom call, go ahead and throw your hand up, and we'll call on you to be able to participate in the discussion.
So shame is a big thing for me. You know, I don't compare my trauma to anybody else's trauma, but I do believe that there's a certain type of shame that comes along with, you know, a loved one committing suicide, you know, walking around feeling like everyone's looking at me like, wow, she couldn't even keep her marriage together. She must have been a horrible wife. You know, I felt like my husband was the martyr and I was the villain. So there was a lot of shame in that. And I've learned to deal with that. I would think I was letting my imagination use me instead of using my imagination. But one of the biggest challenges that I have now, 15 months later, 16 months later, is shame over not progressing in life, feeling like I should be farther along in my healing journey than I am. You know, shame over some days I can't function. Some days I'm very productive, but I have, you know, my past life before the tragedy, I was so super productive, owned my own business, always on the go for years. And now I just feel like the shame gets me frozen, or I get frozen and then I feel shame about it. And then I freeze more and then I feel more shame. So it's just kind of this repetitive cycle that I'm really trying to break from. That's my comment.
So how can we reframe that into pride identity instead of shame identity? So if you approach this concept like I'm not progressing or I haven't accomplished as much as I want to, how can you reframe that situation from a standpoint of personal pride?
Well, I have started to kind of pat myself on the back for the small things that I get accomplished. You know, I'm a to-do list person, so I always have a running list of like 30 things. And if I beat myself up because I can't get all 30 done in one day, but I'm really trying to practice giving myself grace and accepting that the healing process can, you know, take time, and just give myself, feel pride in the things that, the days that I do get out of the house and I do, you know, pay my bills on first, and, you know, these tasks that can seem so overwhelming now, but before it was, you know, very easy for me to be productive, hit the ground running when I woke up. But so that's one of the things. And I do have a lot of pride now after the healing retreat, that I am a survivor and that I have done so well in my healing, despite having bumps in the road still. So I guess those are a couple ways.
Bingo. Yeah. So the self-talk changes from when you hear your voice saying, oh, I feel like I should have done more, you immediately hit it back with the pride identity. Well, but I have done A and I have done B. And then we turn the whips on the back to a pat on the back. And it's like, hey, good job. That's good that I did that. Yeah, it's good. And you stay there, keep your thinking there. And what happens, we create a new neural pathway in the brain. So your brain learns this new thing that we do, like, oh, we actually build Drea up. Oh, we actually tell Drea she did a good job. And that will keep you from freezing and then going back into more things you feel ashamed of and get you out of the cycle.
Okay. Awesome. Good. Thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing with us. Megan?
I want to say that what you're doing is amazing, and focusing on the self is obviously the place to start, because it's the only thing you can ultimately control. But my big question is, what do you do? Because I know I'm not the only one. Whenever you do get yourself out of that situation and you do get yourself away from that toxic person, what do you do whenever you know that you have to send your children back into that toxic environment? How do you handle that? What are you supposed to do?
What is the part that you feel like you can't handle?
The emotional, the potential emotional detriment that will happen to my child, because I believed that my ex loved me. He said that he loved me. I believed him. Now, with hindsight, I know that that was not love. That was abuse. That was control. That was toxic. And now I have to relinquish control whenever I send my child back into that environment. And I feel like I'm sacrificing my child to the wolves. And
right. But like you said,
don't know
you have to relinquish control. You have to relinquish control, meaning you cannot control and protect and shield your child for the rest of its life, right? So the self-talk needs to be, I've done as much as I could. I've done everything I could to protect my child. When my child is with me, they are protected. I do everything I can for my child when they're with me. It is impossible to focus our minds, or it is illogical, or it's distortion to focus our minds on everything we cannot control. So, when I drop my kid off at this person's house, I want to focus on everything that could be happening there that I can't control. That doesn't make sense. At that point, you have to divorce your mind from that situation. Once you've dropped your kid off at someone's house, there's nothing that you can't focus on that situation anymore. When he's with you, you can focus on that. When you release your kid to school, to the world, when they get older and they go to work and they go to the job, you have to divorce yourself from what can happen at that point. So that takes mental work, but we have to recognize that that's a part of life, is that they are out of our protection at a certain point.
But isn't it negligent, or wouldn't it be considered negligent to knowingly drop your child off in an environment where you know that there is the potential for harm or abuse or gaslighting?
What's negligent is to not do everything you can. It's not negligent to realize that there are certain things you cannot do. So recognize what you cannot control, Megan. Write it down on a piece of paper and a list. These are the things that I cannot control. And then divorce your mind from those things, because focusing on those things is not making you a good mom. And it's not negligent to stop focusing on what you cannot control. It's sane. And it will bring you mental peace and sanity to stop focusing on what you cannot control. You need to use that energy of your mind on what you can control, because you'll realize over here, there's a bunch of stuff on this list that you could be doing and need to be doing to focus your mind on. And that will even help to protect your child under this category of what you can control. So please make 2 lists and take the focus of your mind off of what you cannot control.
I had another question, but you just totally derailed me. So,
well, okay. That's good. Just take one at a time. Meditate on what I've said. Take it down. Write it down. Okay. And you can pull back into the discussion later.
Okay. Thank you.
Devin?
I have to go pretty soon. I'm at a hair salon, so I'm just going to type my question. Hang on. Wonder if I heard this. Okay.
Did you finish it? I usually know if shame guilt is a guilt trip, but what about standing up to the guilt trip? Something along the lines of, wait a minute, how do I do that? So you need to stand up to the guilt trip in your mind and not be worried about standing up to the guilt trip to the other people. Sometimes survivors are too focused and worried about what the other person is thinking and thinking that we have to defend ourselves to other people, but you should not defend yourself. Defending yourself is going to pull you into a fight. You need to defend yourself in your mind. So if they say you're to blame for this and you're to blame for that and you're to blame for that, in your mind you go, no, I'm not, no, I'm not, no, I'm not. Why am I still talking to an abuser? It makes no sense. And then get yourself out of that conversation, that situation where you're allowing an abuser to have energetic space, an energetic route to your brain. You protect your brain. So you protect it by defending yourself in your mind. No, I'm not. He's wrong there. That wasn't right. That needs fact checking. That's gaslighting. That's abuse. But you're saying it to yourself. You don't say anything to them because it would be a waste of your time because they're abusers. So anything you say can and will be used against you. So don't talk to abusers. And as soon as you can get them shut up and blocked out, do that as fast as possible. Ren?
Hi. So I was born in the late 60s and raised in the 70s, and I feel like my parents must have been the king and the queen of shame. I don't know if this was a generational thing, but it seems like everything that we did as kids, we were always being told, you should be ashamed of yourself. I mean, that was like the motto, like in the 70s, it almost seems like. I don't know if this was just my experience, but it seemed like it also was happening in an educational sense where teachers were just constantly shaming kids. And I don't know if this was anyone else's experience or if I'm just older than everyone else, but it seems to me like I was really, and my siblings and all my friends, we were all raised with so much shame that I'm really wondering about it right now. And I really appreciate this topic.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That phrase, you should be ashamed of yourself, is actually an abusive statement. If you really take it and you break it down, you should be ashamed of yourself. Not you should be ashamed of what you've done. You should be ashamed of this shameful thing, but of yourself. I should be ashamed of myself. That is actually an abusive statement. Now, it is true that in the old days, many people used to use that term. Even today, people say that. But regardless of when you were born, it is still abusive. It is not excused because it was the 70s or the 60s. Because even all the way as far back as 0 BCE, where Jesus was born, his father said from the heavens, this is my beloved, the one whom I approved. Never did he speak to his son saying this is shame-based things, like you should be ashamed of yourself. So what we actually learn is that no matter how far back we go in history, even the Bible writers knew that you're actually supposed to build people up, that it's abusive to tear people down. And so no matter how far back we go, what era we live in, it is still emotional abuse to tell someone that they should live in shame, that they should feel ashamed of themselves. So colloquial, yes, but still detrimental, not helpful. Thanks, Ren. Perry?
Hello, mic check. Yes?
You're live, white hot.
All right. So with complex trauma comes multiple traumas, and with each of those, the opportunity for shame, I would assume. So I think in trying to remember times where I felt shame, I guess trying to remember times I didn't feel shame, but anyway, trying to think back on them, I think a number of the times I was not able to pinpoint even what the shame was from. So I'd have the feelings, but it was complex, right? It was hard to unravel. So I didn't know. I'm just tossing that concept out to see if you have any comments on that, if it's even important to know what's specifically, having you feel shameful, or just the fact that it's unnecessary and just focus on the positive and encouragement stuff instead, regardless of what's triggering it, if that makes sense.
Very good question. Your question is super valid. Worrying about what triggers the shame is not as important So in order to beat this thing, we need to change the philosophy, go all the way down, Perry, to the deepest seed of a thought that we have around this concept. The whole reason you were given shame identity is because people in authority use that to control. Parents use it, governments use it. It's a way to keep you moldable and controllable. So they don't want you walking around with your chest out feeling pride all the time. They feel like if we just break you down a little bit, then we can control you better. So that was maladaptive. They were giving you something that worked for them, but wasn't going to serve you well in the rest of your life. So go down to the core philosophy of shame and please imprint this new program. Shame is worthless, period. When we talk about toxic shame, it is worthless. There is no scenario where it's helpful to us. It is only detrimental. And with that new philosophy, every time you feel shame, it can hit that wall with this new program of, oh, well, shame is actually worthless. So I can let this go. And then you can do the work, go into pride on the situation if you know what the situation is. But if you don't know what the situation is, the default philosophy, it will be the broad sweep. I do not accept shame. I do not accept shame in my life. That is the self-talk. That is the program. I do not accept shame. Shame is worthless. It does me no good. I will not accept it. That's where you got to be. I don't accept it. Hope that was helpful. Vincent? Oh, I'm sorry, Perry. Did you finish?
No, I guess I'm just thinking, don't you have a video or two, I'm trying to recall, on comparing guilt with shame as well? That shame is not helpful ever, but there are times where guilt is, right? Mm-hmm. Like if you did something wrong or heinous or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. And that is, it's entitled Shame CPTSD on my YouTube.
Right. So I think that I want to get the differentiation of those two clear as well, because, there's people that they have no shame or guilt or anything, more the narcissist side of things, that then they just walk around being jerks on everything. But I think one of the, or entitled, that whole opposite side of the spectrum. But I think something you brought up here before is the very fact that all of us are here even trying to learn these concepts shows which side of the spectrum we're on right from the beginning. Mm-hmm. We're on the side of being the abused, not the abusers, or having the lower self-esteem, not the hubris, and et cetera, right? There's not too many narcissists are showing up here to say, how do I manipulate people better, or anything along those lines. So I try to keep that in mind as well.
Yeah. To answer your question about the difference between guilt and shame, healthy guilt and toxic shame, is that toxic shame is totally worthless because it lacks any personal pride. So you can just let it go. Healthy guilt is still hinged on personal pride. Healthy personal pride allows you to have healthy guilt. So healthy guilt with personal pride is, what I did there was wrong because I want to be better than that. See the personal pride in there? I don't believe in that. That's not what I value. I have this personal pride attached to me, and therefore I'm choosing to feel guilty about what I've done or what happened because it doesn't align with where I want to go, with my values, with my morals. So it's good for me to allow myself to feel this guilt. I want to be beat up by my conscience a little bit because this didn't go and align with who I want to be. Purpose, pride, alignment. Toxic shame is different than that because it just comes from a place, like you said, half the time you don't even know why you feel the shame. and then so when something happens, you're not taking it from the standpoint of, I want to be better than that. You're taking it from the standpoint of, I'm not good enough. That's toxic shame. That supports what I just did supports the idea, this belief that I am not enough. I am worthless. I am the bane of, the bane of the school. Everyone's looking at me. Everyone looks down on me. Shame, shame, shame. Bad, bad, bad. Beat down, beat down, beat down. There's no preservation of ego. When we're over here in the healthy guilt, we're choosing for a period of time, not forever, for a limited period of time to allow ourselves to feel some pain of conscience. It's self-induced because something we didn't align with our values. So it comes from a place of pride. It comes from our morals, our ethics. And so it's actually this robust balance thing that we're doing. We're self-policing.
Okay, I get that differentiation. It's just then the perfectionism will make it so that there's too many standards, and then I could feel guilt about not reaching too many of my perfectionist standards. You get what I'm saying there? That's
Yes, but
another
the healthy pride will squash that out, because healthy pride will say, okay, simmer down now. Like, in other words, I felt guilty about this enough. I've gone through the process. I've learned from it. Now we're going back to what I've been talking about tonight, which is looking at it, extracting the data from the situation and moving on. Like, okay, now here's what I want to do. Here's what I'm going. Here's what I want to be. The shame, I'm never going to go to the shame, because I've already decided I eliminate shame from my life. So I never go there. There's no chance I'm going to slip into the shame, because it's gone. I've eliminated it. So I'm going to feel guilt because I choose to feel the guilt, because I'm deciding how much punishment I get. But all of this is conscious. Instead of just allowing your subconscious and your emotions to guide you, you say, no, consciously, I want to feel bad for that, because what I just went through or what I just did, that doesn't meet up to my expectations. But everything is coming from personal power, personal pride, personal authority. I don't need to be a perfectionist. That needs to be corrected. Perfectionism is maladaptive, so that needs to be corrected.
I try not to be a perfectionist, but I'm not perfect at that. So, okay, I appreciate the I got a smile there. I appreciate the help, and I look forward to the replay. Do you know when you'll have that available? I think I need to go over that section a time or two.
It might not be this meeting, but I'm going to post a video that's talking specifically about this concept by tomorrow.
Excellent. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Vincent.
I just have a question of in it's kind of topical to what you were already talking about. For most of my life, I feel like like abuse from my father sort of gave me that coping mechanism to have a healthy sense of pride, right? And I totally get that healthy sense of pride to combat the shame from the victim perspective. But a recent relationship just turned a way where he got a little toxic, and I was in a position of the abuser. And I'm sort of just still dealing with that guilt of hurting someone. And right now, I feel like we broke things off. There's some sort of closure, but how does one deal with the guilt when it feels like it's deserved, right? Like if you hurt someone, you should feel guilty, and you should deserve to feel guilt, because I'm not in contact with them, so I don't know what their state of their mentality, their mental health, and I feel bad if I can move on without them moving on or becoming healthier.
All right. So, Vincent, who decides that you should feel guilty?
I mean, I assumed it's sort of just like introspection, right? Like, I think I feel like if I don't feel guilty about,
who is the person that decides it? That you should feel guilty?
I for myself have decided myself. I've decided that I should feel, and
good. So I want you to stay there. I decided. That's the personal power. Stay from that matrix. You decide when to move on from the guilt. You decide. So you decide that you will feel guilty because of the abuse that you've done. Now you will decide when you will move on from that guilt. You're deciding, I'm going to put it on the precipice of when they've moved on, blah, blah, blah. That's up to you. You're deciding it. So you have to sit down, be the conscious judge, be conscientious, be fair, and you decide when you will move on from this guilt, but come from a place of pride, purpose, and alignment with your overall goal in life.
I just feel like I'm not a worthy judge of that, because how do I let myself off when I'm the one who did something wrong, right? And I feel like holding on to that guilt makes me feel like not a narcissist, not a sociopath or whatever. Because if I can just move on and I give myself that permission, I feel like, oh, I didn't care. Actually, I didn't really love a person or whatever.
Mhm. And see how you can have this debate with yourself. Well, maybe I shouldn't move on yet. I don't want to be a narcissist. I don't want to be a sociopath. Okay, well, good. I'm going to hold on to the guilt. That's your choice. But are you a worthy judge? Well, I guess by some standard, then nobody is a worthy judge because we're all imperfect and we're all sinful and we're all guilty of something, right? So it's not about whether you're worthy. It's about, are you the sovereign of yourself? Are you the person in authority of yourself? And the answer to that is yes. You were given you to care for. You were appointed over you. It is you who has control over your systems of consciousness, and your emotions and all that has been given to you. Your body, your mind, your soul has been assigned to you, Vincent. So regardless of whether you think you're the worthy judge, you're the person who decides the sentencing. It is up to you whether you think you're worthy or not. So you must accept, well, I guess I'm the guy who has to decide. And then, regardless of how worthy you feel, have this conversation with yourself. Be wise, sit back, analyze purpose, bring in personal pride, bring in healthy guilt, and create a balanced sentence for yourself and decide when you're going to let it go.
Thanks. Appreciate that.
You're more than welcome. Jeremiah?
Actually, hi, Roman. How are you? This is Huguette. I'm using my son's account.
Hey, Huguette.
How are you?
I'm great.
Okay, so this session is so important to me because I battle with this for years. I'm talking about back when I was 14 years old. So self-blame is truly something I feel like that is rooted in me. Like I do this up until this day. I do this every day. So today, by having you explaining this, it makes so much sense that it's an inner child self-blame, because like you explained, kids do that. They blame themselves for everything that happens. And I do this every day, all day, 24/7. So my fear is that although I know this and I'm going to practice it to the point where I want to put everything I'm working on to the side so I can work on this, because I feel like this really is the point of change for me. If I can reframe self-blame, I can truly figure out myself, my purpose, everything that I've worked so hard for. I could truly work on that. But my fear is that because it's so rooted in me for so long, it's going to revert back. How am I going to remember this every day to not do it? Because this is something I've been doing for years. We're talking about since I was 14 years old. And now that I know what to do, what is an effective way to actually implement this daily so I can truly reprogram my mind to actually do this?
That's a great question. The first thing is making a decision. And making a decision right now, energetically, to reject shame. When I'm telling you guys, you need to let go of shame. I'm not saying like, hey, we should get together sometime. No, I mean right now. Recognize that shame is unacceptable and stop it. Cut it out. It's not impossible to do. You can cut out molesting children. You have the ability to decide what you will do, what you will accept. There are certain thoughts in your head that are unacceptable thoughts. So you take shame and you put it into that category. Oh, this is unacceptable. Shame is unacceptable in the category of all the unacceptable thoughts and things that I will not entertain and think about. It's like that. Then you see, now you've done the work that puts you into the advantage position. So when your mind goes into those old neural pathways, start trying to rework and go, hey, we're going to go into shame, you remember, oh, I actually made a decision that I don't do this anymore. And then you use the tools I've given you today. Okay, I'm going to reframe it, look at it from a position of pride, personal power, purpose, and alignment.
Okay. Makes sense.
So decide right now, right at this very second, decide to let shame go. It's done. It has no place in your life.
Yes, for sure. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to the shame-free Huguette. Sarah?
Hi. Yeah, I just wanted to share on the shame thing because just a personal experience, because it's something that came up for me today and something I've actually been thinking about for the past week or so. So when I was still dating the narcissist, first of all, I just want to say NPD is rooted in toxic shame. So it's not that they don't have it. They might not express it overtly, but I can tell you that like the entire lineage of my ex was just toxic shame. Like their whole, I don't know, everybody in his family had the toxic shame, whether they had full-blown NPD or not. And he definitely had it. He would sometimes express it because he was a covert narcissist, but sometimes he would hide it. It would just depend, you know, his grandiosity would fluctuate or whatever. But he did a lot of things toward the end that were specifically intended to project guilt, shame onto me, and especially shame. He would just try to do it like ambiently. He would like project it into the air and hope I would pick it up. And when that didn't work, he started to take specific actions, abusive actions that were very humiliating, so that I would experience the shame that he felt. He wanted me to feel all the, you know, terrible things that he was feeling, and he would do things to make sure I felt that. But there was a brief period of time where I felt it was humiliating. I didn't want to tell people about the couple of things he had done toward the end. But once I started telling people, I started realizing, hey, it's okay. I can tell people it's a little humiliating, but this isn't my shame. It is not my humiliation. He did these things. I didn't do these things. So therefore, it's not my shame to feel. I can tell people about it. And it was a little bit of an embarrassing thing that happened to me, but it's not my humiliation. It isn't my shame. This is something that somebody else did. It's an experience I had that was shameful, but the shame isn't mine.
Beautiful. Thank you, Sarah. Thanks for sharing that with us. Megan?
Thanks, Roman, for calling on me again. I really appreciate it. Based off of what Sarah just said, I think there's a real gnashing of teeth between having humility and carrying shame. What's the real difference there? I know that one carries with one comes strength, with the other comes I don't know, something that we don't need to carry. So how do we differentiate there?
That's a very good question, because humility is such a beautiful quality. And it's ironic because I was literally going to say to you, oh, you have so much humility, you know. And so we do want to have humility. Humility is what tempers the pride, right? So I talked about personal pride today. We don't want to have too much pride. Too much pride is arrogance. Arrogance is where we actually start to look down on other people. So just like personal pride gets bad when it goes to the point of how we're viewing ourselves in relation to other people, specifically viewing ourselves as being above the other people and looking down, meaning scornfully on others, that's arrogance. And that's taking pride too far. Likewise, humility is where it comes into our relationship to other people. So shame is where you've taken yourself and you've just put yourself in the basement and everyone else is upstairs and above you and you're the worst and you're viewing yourself as being down there. Humility is an outward display of our spirit, which allows us to interact with other people in a way that doesn't create a friction. So you look at it almost like a lubricant. It allows us to move as the gears of a ship with other people and to work with them using humility. And so humility is a display of, I'm able to give you a position above me or not assume that I'm above you in a social hierarchy, but it has nothing to do with your actual value. Whereas with shame, it's all about your actual value being less than as a result, or you're fearing that everyone views you as less than as a result. With humility, it's saying my value is intrinsic. It doesn't change, but I'm willing to make myself small in a social setting, socially speaking, so that we can work together without friction. It's a little bit of lubricant between the gears to make sure things can flow. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. Thank you. I just wanted to clarify because I know that that's something that I personally struggle with.
Yeah, it's a really good question because obviously, you know, humility, guilt, shame, humble, it's like they're real close, right? And so easily we can go too far and end up in one or the other. But again, pride, and then there's arrogance. We don't want that. We want personal pride, which is beautiful. Also, there's humility, which is beautiful, but we don't want toxic shame. That's too much. Ren?
I just want to share a personal experience because it's really, really difficult to turn the shame around into a strength. And I want to share with everyone something that happened to me. My ex, who's a psychopath narcissist, we're going through the court system, and to shame me and humiliate me, he filed naked photos of me from our marriage in his court papers. And I had to go, I still to this day have to go before that judge. And every time we go to court. And it is so hard to do that, knowing this man has seen my naked body and I have to stand before him and fight for the rights of my child. So I've tried to find a sense of humor in it because it's so lewd and ludicrous that that's the way that I do it anyways, because some things are just so bad that it's really hard to turn them into something good.
Beautiful example, Ren. Excellent. Yeah. So first of all, you have our empathy for the ridiculous abuse that you experienced. But the way they're handling it is exactly right. So it's the choice to reframe the way we view it. Because if we go, oh no, I can't because he's seen it in the photos and the pictures and the naked and me, and I'm nothing, and I'm lower and I'm lower and I'm lower, and I'm just a scrum, I'm just a crumb on the ground, I'm just a cockroach, and he's up here, right? We've put ourselves into shame. And now we don't feel worthy. And then what happens? We don't show up for court. And then our life starts to go wrong as a result of giving in to the shame. So why would we let that moron win? Meaning your husband who would do something so awful to a woman. So what do? We reframe it. Humor is a great example. Okay, well, that wasn't the person I would intend to see those photos, but I guess he's seen them now.
I said, that was me 20 years ago. He tried to say this is how I answer the door every time he comes to do a child custody exchange. And I said, that was me 20 years and 20 pounds ago. You know, there's no truth to that.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Exactly. And so you just have to view it from the standpoint of, like you said, this is ludicrous. So I choose to see it as funny. And it's like every time you go in, you go before them and so on and so forth, instead of thinking they're thinking this and it's bad. And it's, you know, it's me and I'm nothing, I'm down low. It's like, no, I'm an equal. How are you an equal? Well, doesn't everyone have a naked body? Yeah. So everyone's got parts. We got the same parts, right? So it's like, it is what it is. Like it, you know, a photo from 20 years ago, it might as well be a photo of someone else, right? And so when you are doing that, what you're doing is reframing it from a standpoint of personal pride. And it's mental work because you're forcing yourself to think thoughts that aren't coming naturally to you. But what happens is those thoughts that you're forcing yourself to think produce a different emotional state. And with the personal pride and the personal power, you're feeling prideful and powerful. And if you're feeling prideful and powerful, then you can show up to court. And that's the whole point. We have to make sure that you don't get psyched out of living your life and standing up for yourself and speaking up. So good for you. That's exactly what you got to do. Keep doing that mental work of reframing it.
Because you stopped it. So earlier you're talking about, like, I can't remember the exact words you were saying about finding the moment, like I survived the trauma. So as you survive the trauma and the extensive trauma, I just come out of a relationship where I also was the emotional and verbal abuser. And I had no idea I was doing it. There's some idea I was doing it, but it was kind of, so now I'm in the process of owning my stuff and working through that trauma. I went through, and I don't know if the why matters, but I went and interviewed all my family members to see where, where it all came from, what was going on. So I just want to know how you find the victory in that.
Meaning, so you feel shame over tell me where the point of shame is.
All from making sure her, ex fiance, all the pain I caused her, everything she's going through. She's, been verbally and emotionally abused. And I don't know that's shame, but that's guilt, I would think.
Right, exactly. So in that case, like you said, when you've done something legitimately wrong, it's not about finding a victory in it. It's about contextualizing it as healthy guilt. So it's okay, here's what I have done wrong. I see it very clearly, and here's how I'm going to feel about it. And here's how long I'm going to feel the guilt. And now we move forward with our life, because ultimately the best thing you can do for society is transcend and to become a better version of yourself.
Keeps happening. I mean, it's not funny, but it doesn't keep happening to the extent, but each time, like this time, she's gone right now, but I wrote down something I've learned is I wrote down an exit strategy. I've been watching you now for a couple of weeks, not an exit strategy, just like a plan. And the first one's on there, stop, still, thought, observe it, pause. What's next? Bring myself to the room, go get a glass of water, something. But it just, and I'm just trying to accelerate the process and make it stop faster. But it's just, I think there's a lot of emotional flashbacks where I get out of my body, and then it's like, what do you do? So you don't have to answer that. I was just kind of.
Is it normally anger that triggers you?
I would say probably so. I mean, last time I was triggered, I walked in the house. She was kind of doing her own thing, kind of ignoring me. The kids were surprised I was there. I didn't just walk in, I rang the doorbell. And the kids were surprised I was there. And, they're 10-year-old in their face. They just read it on their face. So they look shocked and surprised. And all of that triggered me. Like, okay, I wasn't getting, any attention. The kids were surprised and so forth. So, and then,
right.
Yes, and then it went right to anger.
Your emotional state while you're being abusive is normally anger. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, very good. So what you have to do is learn how to process that anger differently. So I have some videos on anger in the trauma healing course, and then also you probably find one on YouTube. And then when you understand how to process your anger differently, there's also a chapter about it on my book. So any of those things can be a helpful resource. And then you're using the right things. The stop method is going to be your method. So you can instantaneously stop being abusive by utilizing the stop method, because the first step in the stop method is be still. So that prevents any verbal or physical abuse. When you're being still and you're shutting up, it's not possible to abuse a person, you see. And then you work through the steps of being thoughtful, being observant, being patient. By the time you get to the end, you have not reacted in an abusive manner. So utilizing the stop method is the right one. So that's going to be your main tool, along with the rule of 7 seconds. Have you learned that one yet?
Well, it's part of the stop method, 5 to
Very
7
good.
seconds. It's posted it's posted right by my computer office, or my office or the computer at my office.
So at work, use the rule of 7 seconds in normal, everyday, mundane conversations. Just anytime anyone talks to you or wants anything from you, just keep defaulting to the rule of 7 seconds, rule of 7 seconds. Then when you're in an actual triggering situation, again, you're learning to pause. And then I just posted hopefully you can still hear me. I just posted a new video on flashbacks and how to overcome the emotional flashbacks, if you haven't seen that yet.
Thank you. I was just practicing the 7 seconds.
Yeah, you're in the right place, and these tools are definitely going to help you. You can change this instantaneously, Joe. Open your mind to that. You can change this instantaneously. We're not talking about weeks of work. We're talking about like a few hours of work. Schedule a session with me, and we can get this changed. Perry?
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Thanks for speaking up.